Hi guys, and welcome back to another video and our update on our high mileage E92 M3 project. If you've been following the channel, you would have seen that we bought a very high mileage E92 M3 and we're going through it to make it drive as well as our Japan red E92, which has around 68,000 miles. So the last thing we did was change some of the suspension arms. It made a positive difference, but it still had a lot of sloppy feeling around the rear end. So what we're going to do today is have a look at the rear subframe. Aston is over here. Hello, Aston.
Hello, mate. You all right?
So the next plan is, because there seems to be a lot of disconnect between the rear subframe and the car, it just feels like it's wandering around everywhere.
Yeah.
Is to drop this and change some of the bushes.
Yeah.
So over here we've got mainly OEM bushes to go back in because I don't want to upset the ride quality too much, but we are going to change the rear subframes for some solid ones from Millway just to see if we can tighten that rear end up. But we will have a closer look at these once we have the subframe out. So looking at it, it looks really bad. Yeah. I'm not sure how that's going to clean up. So the plan is to drop it, push the bushes out?
Yeah, so press all the bushes out. The subframe bushes, these bushes for all the arms, like the main subframe bushes,
yep.
All the bushes that are in these arms that aren't connected to the arms that we changed already.
Yep.
And then we're probably going to have to replace things along the way, like the brake lines that run over here, because they kind of sit over the frame.
Sure.
I don't think they're going to come undone too well, so we'll have to replace those. And then potentially handbrake cables, depending on how they come out of the hub.
Yeah.
And stuff like drive shaft nuts, because they're corroded. The only thing we've kind of come across as we're looking is there seems to have been a bit of movement in this adjustment.
Yeah.
You see where you've got the tone arm. You've got the eccentric washer sits in here. Mm-hmm. Obviously these two tabs are supposed to sit either side of the washer.
Yeah.
And the force on this has bent this tab out, which has given us a gap there.
Yeah.
So that's obviously going to cause the rear wheel to toe in slightly, which gives you a bit more play on the back. So we need to kind of work out what we're going to do in terms of repair for that issue. So
we're not going to really know until we've dropped that, get it blasted, see what kind of condition it is. So the options are repair this one, get a second-hand one, or get a new one.
Or buy a new frame, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, moving forward, we do need to do this. We do need to do a repair on this regardless, because there's no point changing all these arms to fix it all up, and then we've got movement in that.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of movement now by hand, but once you've got the movement of the whole car and the weight of it, it probably causes a lot of issues.
Yeah, and it's a lot of labour to do this job and money to blast it, powder coat it and push the bushes in. So the last thing we want to do is waste all that time and money and end up with a problem.
While it's down, you do it properly once and then you're out. I mean, we have to drop it anyway, regardless, because of the project we're doing.
Yeah.
So if we strip it all out today, drop the frame down, and then we can kind of sit down and have a look at what options we've got for moving forward, whether we want to try and repair that, either weld a new plate on it with the eccentric washer, the eccentric gap, or replace it for another subframe. Okay,
and I will mention, this is high mileage, but this is looking quite rusty underneath compared to other cars, because I think it spent a lot of its time in Scotland near the coast, so it's had a lot of exposure to salt, and I think it's probably been used throughout winter. It's probably one of the worst ones that I've seen, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much with you on that. Obviously, I've been under a lot of these. Most of them tend to have surface rust anyway, because that's just kind of the material they're made out of. But like you said, this is very excessive.
Okay, cool. So I will leave you to do your thing and drop this. I don't know how long it's going to take you, but I'll join
you in a week.
I'll see you next week.
So Imran's gone back upstairs. He's left me the glorious job of stripping it all out. We're not going to go too in depth in the video of what we're doing during the process of dropping it down. I think Matt's just going to set up a time lapse. So I'll give you a quick rundown of what I'm going to do to get to the stage of dropping the subframe out. So the first thing I do is drop the exhaust down. So that's out the way and we can access the entire subframe. The heat shields and stuff will come off, so we can disconnect the prop from the diff. The arms and the hubs and the discs and all that kind of stuff are all going to come off as well. The spring, the wiring, the drop links, the anti-roll bar. And then I think the last thing would be the handbrake cables, and take those out. And then the drive shafts will come out from the diff and from the hub. And then we'll lay everything out nice and neat so we know what we've got. Once we've got everything down and run through, we know where we're going to move with this issue and replacing the subframe or repairing it, and we know anything we need to replace during the process that's kind of got damaged or caused us issues. But hopefully the next time you see me on the camera, we will have this on the floor and everything will be stripped off, ready to go.
So Aston, last time I left you, subframe was still on the car and I wished you good luck with the job. So how much of a job was it to take it out?
Here we are a month later and I finally got it off. No, to be fair, all things considered, it wasn't actually too bad of a job. Obviously it's quite time intensive where you got a lot of stuff to take off, but in terms of removing everything, it actually wasn't too bad of a job. Everything came undone pretty well. The only thing I think we lost was like handbrake cables and the brake lines, which we kind of expected anyway because they tend to be seized when you're doing this kind of job.
And the car generally underneath, it kind of looks what I would expect from a UK car with this much mileage. I've seen ones with slightly less that probably a bit worse than this, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, initial kind of viewing, there's no cracks or like deep corrosion, deep rust. There's nothing really breaking through, no holes or anything like that. It's mainly surface stuff. So that's not too much of a worry. If people want to kind of coat underneath while they've got the subframe off, it's a good idea to do, but it's probably not something we're going to do.
We're not going to do it to this car because we're not that concerned with what we're doing underneath. As long as structurally it's fine, that's all we care about. And that bodes well for the long-term care of these cars, because like E46 M3s have a very known subframe issue with it cracking, and these don't seem to have that at all compared to those cars. The subframe itself, we've had a lot of comments in the video saying it's like super rusty and why is it looking like this? The UK roads get salted every winter and this car has obviously been used all year round, so that's probably why it's in the condition it's in. So in normal circumstances, if it was my car and I was keeping it long term, I would have just bought a new subframe, but we're trying to do this kind of on a budget to see what the costs are. So we're gonna get this blasted, and once that's done, we'll have a look at it again, make sure that there's nothing really on towards with it, and then we'll carry on and put the new bushes in this and get it back in the car.
Yeah, once it's blasted and all the coating and stuff is off, that gives us a good idea of what the actual subframe condition is. Because it's then opened up, we've got a clearer view, make sure there's no cracks underneath the paint and there's no actual rust running through on these areas here. Because once they blast it, it will thin it out a little bit anyway. And if they do that and it causes holes, then we know we've got to start doing reinforcement parts on the frame. But generally looking at it, aside from that bit that we've already spoken about, we should be able to blast it and powder coat it and we'll be good to go.
Okay, cool. So it's that time in the video again where I bid you good luck and leave you to it.
So you may notice in front of me this subframe looks a lot better than the subframe we took off the car. That is because we have replaced it with a brand new one. The reason for that is because once we had the old subframe blasted, we noticed that in areas the metal was looking really weak and quite thin. And because of what we saw on Becky Evans' E92 M3 where it cracked, we didn't want ours to follow the same way. So we decided to save any future headache, we were just going to replace it for a new subframe. Obviously with the new subframe, it does come with all the bushes already pressed into it. So we're not going to bother changing them for the Millway ones, we're just going to use the brand new bushes as a comparison to the old bushes on the broken subframe. Around the subframe you see the arms and bolts and springs and all the hubs and stuff, which we'll have to build back up before we put it back onto the car. Along with the diff and the anti-roll bar. We've got new anti-roll bar bushes which we're going to fit. We've pressed new bushes and bearings into the hub. So I've also got a handful of new parts that we're going to change over while the subframe's down. Some of them broke while we were removing them, and some of them are just very difficult, if not impossible, to fit with the subframe on the car. Such as the anti-roll bar bushes, which we're going to change over, the brake disc backing plates, which were rusted and broken when we took them off, the handbrake cables, which were seized to the hub, so we had to break them to remove them, and then we've got various nuts, bolts and washers that we're going to change over as well. So with all that said and done, let's build it all back up, we get it up onto the car, and then Imran can get it out on the road and see if all of the hard work has been worth it and that we've tightened up the back end of this car. So the new subframe is fitted to the car and everything else is buttoned back up. As we said before, we've not changed everything because we have tried to do it on a budget. A lot of stuff didn't need changing because it was still functioning as it should, and some of it we have already changed, like the arms. So hopefully now the car will drive as a new one would drive from the factory, but there's only one way to find out, and that's to get Imran back in the car and get him out on the road to test it for us.
With everything put together on the car and the car aligned, let's see what it's like after having all the rear subframe components changed. So before it felt really loose around this corner. No, yeah, that feels really good, very controllable. It had a lot of sideways movement. I could feel the car moving around underneath me, but now it feels brand new, as you'd expect. And I think the lowest mileage E92 I've driven is probably around 10,000 miles when they're relatively new, and this now does feel like a new car and a lot sharper than our Japan red car, which has around 70,000 miles on it. So this now does feel like a proper E92 M3. Yeah, there's just very little movement now, as you'd expect from the rear end. It's very controllable. It's just taken all the sloppiness out of it. This project's taken us a little bit longer than expected because we were let down by a few people who said they could powder coat and sort out the old one, and then we had to buy a new one. So there's no doubt that this car now does drive a hell of a lot better and pretty much like a new car. But financially, has it been worth it? This car's got 150,000 miles. We've spent quite a bit of money. So I'm going to head back to the unit now and we can have a quick run through what we've spent and whether I think financially it is worth doing on a car with this much mileage. Before I give you my summary of whether I think it was worth it or not on this particular car, let's look at how much this project has cost us so far. So up to the previous video, we were at £20,250. In this video, we've done the subframe, which is £1,435. We couldn't rescue the old one, it was too rusty, so we had to buy a brand new one, so that did bump up the cost quite a bit. Bushes, £178, miscellaneous parts, £355. 16 hours of labour to do the job at our labour rate of £100 is £1,600. So the total cost of this job was £3,568. Now that brings our grand total up for the car and all the work that we've done for this project so far at £23,818. So we're knocking on the door of £24,000, which will buy you a lot lower mileage E92 M3. So do I think it's worth it? Well, it has actually transformed the handling of this car. It feels really tight and it's probably up there with the new ones I drove back in the day. But with this being such a high mileage car, I don't know if we would even recover the £23,818 if we were to sell it today. I think it will make a really interesting video to compare this directly with our Japan red one, because although we haven't done all of the suspension work on that car, it has 70,000 miles and we have actually improved the dampers and the springs. So watch out for that video and I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you liked the video, please remember to smash that like button, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel. If you want to join the conversation, please drop a comment below and we'll try our best to respond to you. If you want to watch more of this project, you can do so over here. If you want to watch what YouTube thinks you might like from our other content, you can do so over here.